Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to this LinkedIn Live with me, Justin York. And for the next 25 minutes, we're going to talk about why habits and behaviors in your data ecosystem are a leadership issue. Data ecosystems rarely fail simply because of systems, tools, or data quality. They're often influenced a lot by the habits and behaviors of the people that are working inside that ecosystem. Those people will be creating workarounds. They'll be correcting reports just before they go to a senior meeting or a board meeting. They'll be avoiding escalating issues because they don't think anybody will do anything. They prefer to have speed over quality. They rely on individuals, people with the stuff locked up in their heads, those workarounds, those shortcuts that people have created. And then people would rather patch things than fix them. So they'd like to keep putting sticking plasters on, tactical fixes all the time, rather than remediate and fix the issues. But these things, all of those things are not random. People don't come in and say, oh, do you know what? I think I'll create a workaround today. They don't do that. They create it in response to something that's not working very well for them. And part of that is the leadership conditions that allow those things, or the space for those things to actually happen. So if you've got an ecosystem that relies on people chasing stuff constantly, fixing things constantly, and then leaders will think to themselves, well, these people, these poor behaviors that I'm seeing, why don't they just follow the right process? Why don't they just use the proper systems? Why are they not raising issues and getting things resolved so we can do things so much better and more effectively? And there are far too many workarounds that are existing in this organization. I see far too many things happening that I don't like the look of. But a better way to view that is what is making them behave in that way, because something is making them behave like that. So data ecosystems include all sorts of things: reports and dashboards and systems and tooling and data quality and data owners and data stewards and forums and processes. All sorts of stuff comes together to make up your ecosystem. But all of those things are affected by habits and behaviors. And it's those habits and behaviors that we have to understand, because they are going to tell us how people will handle the data when they are under pressure. Will they still validate things? Will they make sure it's fit for purpose? Will they make sure the quality is correct? Or will they just use it and get going and move on? Will they raise issues, or will they hide them? Will they sweep them under the carpet? I'll come back to that later. Later means the 12th of never, and it never gets resolved. They don't trust the official sources. So they'll have their local copies of spreadsheets. They'll have local copies of reports. They may even be using old reports that they keep updating with new data because they don't trust the official system. They're fixing the symptoms that exist inside organizations, fixing the symptoms around the data. It's a bit like if you really hurt your knee, if you twisted your knee and you think, oh, I might have damaged a ligament, but actually if I take loads of painkillers, it goes away. Well, all you're doing is fixing a symptom. The symptom is the pain. You're not fixing the actual problem in your knee. You might fix it eventually. It may settle down. It may not. So we need to think about that. Are they using the agreed definitions? I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the term bi-weekly, which can mean twice a week or once every 2 weeks. But you can't have a definition that says bi-weekly means every 2 weeks or twice a week, because that's not a clear, well-defined term. So are they using the real definitions, or are they just creating their own view of the world, what their own perception is of that? Or do they make or avoid decisions? Because quite often people will avoid decisions because either it's not their place to do that, or they don't know who it is that's supposed to do that. But all of these things are shaping your ecosystems. And if you ignore one of those things, you misunderstand others. Now, I said at the beginning why I think it's a leadership issue. So why do I believe that? Well, people do what they do, whether it's shortcuts, workarounds, whatever it is, they do what they do to keep things moving. They will correct spreadsheets. They'll update spreadsheets. They cut and paste things in spreadsheets, which is reasonably risky. They will bypass processes if the process isn't working for them, if it isn't going fast enough, it's not doing what they need it to do. They may use old reports in order to get what they can and have it just updated, because if it's coming out of a spreadsheet, then you can create it yourself, you can update things. They may make assumptions. Somebody will have validated that. Somebody will have applied the standard. As I've said before, if you go to your organization chart, have a look on there for names. I doubt you'll find somebody. It's always a person, a name. And all of those other things delay escalation. And because we don't escalate things and take actions, then we end up with these sets of problems. So the work is getting done, but the risks are being hidden. So pressure drives speed, but it doesn't help with governance. So leaders are shaping what happens in our ecosystems. So often, and I've seen this plenty of times, somebody will pop their head around a door and say, is that report ready yet? And you know what? The report will be ready. You don't know what's being done to make it ready, but the report will be ready. So they ask that question because that's what their focus is, rather than asking something like, why am I seeing this again? Why has that not changed? Surely we've moved on from that. So there are a series of questions, but those things come down to permission and accountability. Now, when we think about permission, I'm thinking about people feeling in a psychologically safe place to raise the issues that they see to the leadership, to owners, to senior people, without fear of being dismissed, ignored, or even worse, blamed for raising it in the first place. People need to feel safe to say, this data can't be trusted. My confidence level in this data is X because of whatever it is. We're fixing the data manually all of the time. We've tried to get the source issue fixed, but it's just not being done. The process that we should be using for this just isn't clear. I don't even know where to find it. It's not being updated. So I don't know what the process is. And the ownership, well, who owns it? Who's making the decision? Who's applying the resource? Or they might say there's a work being used to create this report, which creates quite a bit of risk. Now, all of those things mean that your data ecosystem may appear to be healthier than it actually is. That's not a good place for us to be. So then we have to think about accountability. So if nobody takes accountability for a decision, or the decision isn't owned, then the issue will drift. It's really easy to pass things from pillar to post, just to keep moving stuff around. That's not mine, that's such and such's. And they'll go, oh, that's not mine, that belongs to somebody else. But that's not accountability. Accountability means taking ownership of something. And even if it's not yours, if it's causing you a problem, then get involved. Do something that says we can be more constructive. And if data owners are passive, so they're just a name on a RACI chart or a name on an organizational chart, and they're not making decisions, they're not allocating resource, then all that does is load up your data stewards. Your data stewards will have more and more and more that they have to do. And if a data owner attends a forum, a data governance forum, and all they see is a load of updates and they go, oh yeah, that's a great load of updates so we got there. That is not the purpose of a forum. They should be getting involved and saying, hang on a minute, why have we still got that issue? Why haven't we resolved that? Whose issue is it? What do we need to do to get rid of it? So leadership takes accountability from a role description to actual actions. And that's what we're really looking for. But in my mind, there are three visibilities that we need to think about. So the first one is pressure. Pressure to deliver, pressure to report, pressure to respond, but do it quicker. Not only do it quicker, but do it quicker with less. So that creates a huge amount of pressure for people. And that means that what people will do is patch things rather than look at them and then remediate those issues. And so where there is pressure in your organizations, think about this when you go back to your desk. Think where in our organization, our ecosystem, is there pressure and people are feeling that they need to create workarounds for these things? Then there's overload. There's too much work, there's too many reports, there's too many issues, there's too little time to do these things. If overload is high, governance just becomes something else to manage. So again, think about in your own ecosystems. Are your data stewards, your analysts, your business users, are they overloaded by a whole load of unresolved issues that they don't really need to have hanging around, things that you could take action to get rid of? The last one then is misunderstanding, because people will misunderstand things because of the way they like to be communicated with. I always talk about the 6 things you need to know in your data ecosystem, right? What have you got? Where is it? How does it move around? Who's using it? What for? Who owns it? And what is the quality of it? And those are the 6 things that if you can answer those questions, you can answer most of the questions that's presented to you about your data ecosystem. But if we can't answer those things, we end up with a level of misunderstanding. And in terms of misunderstanding, we could be thinking about what the data actually means. So let's go back to bi-weekly. Is it twice a week or is it once every 2 weeks? So what does the data actually mean? Which source can we trust? So we think about what data have we got? Where is it? How does it move around? What's the quality of it? Who owns it? Which sources can we really, really trust in our organization? Who owns particular issues? Because if we don't know who owns something, if we can't find out who owns it, then we can't go to them and say, we've got this issue, it's your data, we need to get it fixed. But we can't do that if we don't know who owns it. Or maybe we don't know which standard applies, where it should be applied, how these things should be done. We don't know those things. We may not even know why data governance actually matters. Remember, I was talking about before, when we're under a lot of pressure, data governance is just something else to manage, right? But data governance does matter. And all of that comes down to how it's explained originally. What is it? Why have you got it? And more importantly, what's in it for the people that you want to do something with data governance? What are they expected to do in their roles? What's their role description? What do you want them to actually do? So all of those things like misunderstandings creates inconsistent behavior. And so when people are living in a world of inconsistency, they make different decisions. They make different choices. And it's important that we understand what those are. But then you think to yourself, well, what could we do differently? Come on, Justin, what could we do differently? You know, give me something practical, right? So we can ask better questions for a start. Instead of popping your head around the door and saying, is that report ready? Or an owner putting their head around saying, have you got that report yet? Then ask questions like, can we trust the data that's in here? What is the confidence level? What is the quality, percentage quality term of the data that I am looking at? Have there been any manual corrections in order to create this report? Why has that issue occurred? How long has that been happening? Who owns the issue? And what do I need to do to remove that blocker? To make sure that we're using the best possible quality data, to make sure that we're using the right data from a trusted source and it's of the right quality. What do you need me to do? That's what we want people to start to ask. We want people to start taking interest in how the report was created, not just the fact that the report is ready. So we could also make workarounds visible, right? Workarounds are signals that something is not supporting your people the way that it should. Your data ecosystem is not supporting people properly. It might be there's a gap in a process. It might be that a process is too slow. There might be any sorts of reasons why a workaround is created. Somebody might have just decided they could save a little bit of time, and what they would do is they create this great workaround that actually causes 20 minutes work for somebody else further down the line. But that doesn't matter because it's not them. But it's not something, when they become visible, and we really want them visible because we either want to document them or we need to understand the gaps that have been created that are allowing the space for those workarounds. So it's not just a case of saying stop. It's a case of identifying it and understanding it and finding out what it is that is driving that workaround. Why did somebody create it originally? We might have found, when we think we rely on individuals, for example, somebody might have created that workaround and left, in which case we don't even know why it was created. Leaders also need to make time for root cause analysis and remediation of the issues, because if we don't make enough time to have issues fixed properly, then we'll always end up with workarounds and shortcuts and manual fixes and correcting reports and all that kind of stuff that we don't really need. And if everything is handled in crisis mode, then the organization will just keep patching stuff. They'll keep putting sticking plasters on. And anybody knows if you've had an injury and you rip the sticking plaster off, it can be quite painful for a while. And so the temporary fixes will eventually come to a point where they don't work anymore. And so leaders need to make space for people to do things properly. That's what we would like, to do things properly. But they also need to support the data owners and data stewards. Leaders need to support them. Data owners need to support their data stewards. Data owners need to be active. They need to be making decisions. They need to be allocating resources. They need to be asking the right questions. Because if they're not active, nothing is going to get done, because they are accountable and they have the power on their sets of data. But data owners also need to support their data stewards, because if you don't support them and you don't stop all this stuff coming down to them that data owners are supposed to be dealing with, then the data stewards end up carrying the load. And then all they'll do is create workarounds and shortcuts, not because they want to, but because it gets the job done. And so we need to make sure that anybody that is a leader, a data owner, etc., is not just a name on a RACI matrix, because if they're just a name on a RACI matrix, we are not going to get anywhere. And so leaders need to show why it is that behaviors matter. We need to connect things to business outcomes, because poor behaviors will create rework. I always find it interesting that there's always plenty of time and money to do things 15 times, but there's never enough time and money to do it right the first time. and save all that effort. Poor behaviours will lead to poor decisions based on data that we don't really understand, we don't really know the confidence about, we're not really able to trust it. So in other words, your poor decisions are guesses. They're not really good decisions at all. Poor behaviours will increase risk. Risks will go up. That might be something to do with customer impact. Could be something like a loss of trust, a loss of reputation. The last thing you need is lots of people saying, oh, I won't deal with them again because of whatever it is that you've done. Those types of things then might lead to issues with compliance with the regulatory authorities. You don't want to get involved with them either. You don't want to be in their spotlight because you just want to be able to keep your business moving and keep going. But all of those things basically come back to wasted effort. Time is money. There is a cost to that time that's being consumed. And if you're wasting all the effort doing rework and all that kind of stuff, then you're consuming a lot of money. Whereas if we have good behaviors, then we can have confidence, we can have trust, we can have higher levels, we can measure things, we can have clarity and transparency. We can have people that say, actually, I trust this data set because I know the quality of it. I know the standards that have been applied. I know it's being kept up to date. All of that will improve decisions. So all of a sudden, rather than guesses, what we're doing is we are now making decisions based on actual science and measurements. And that will lower risks. Everybody likes to lower risk, right? You don't want high levels of risk. But it will also lead to less firefighting. In fact, you can move to a position where you are much more in fire prevention mode. So like having a proper sprinkler system and an alarm system. So we're preventing the fires from starting, so we don't have to rush around putting them out. And all of that leads to stronger outcomes. So what might good look like in a leader-led ecosystem? Well, we might see that issues are raised early, but not just raised early. We look at them, we remediate them, we take actions to resolve them. We'll be asking those different questions. What level of confidence have you got in this data? How do you know that? The data owners will be making decisions, and they will be supporting their data stewards. They'll be making sure that they are removing the blockers that they need to. They'll be having the difficult conversations. The workarounds will be recognized and they will be understood, maybe documented. More to the point, we might raise the issue that's created the workaround in the first place and resolve it. So that gets rid of the need for the workaround. And we have to understand that pressure is not an excuse for poor practice. And we should also find that the critical data items in our ecosystem are well documented. Any issues with them are well understood. Everything is prioritized around the critical data. We take actions and remediate things based on priority and need. The forums are doing what they're supposed to do, discussing things, making decisions, removing the blockers. And all of your data quality and data governance is linked to business outcomes. So if your data ecosystem is full of pressure and overload and misunderstanding, don't just say, oh, follow the rules, because that's not very helpful. Look at the leadership conditions that have created the space for those things to happen inside your ecosystem. Because how people feel and how they handle your data under pressure will tell you what's happening in their world. Now, I've got a workshop coming up on the 16th of July, as you've probably seen on the ticker tape at the bottom there, 16th of July, 12:30 BST. We're going to be talking about why your data governance doesn't land in the way that you might like it to. A whole load of things we'll be unpacking on there. So if you like further details about that, then DM me or put workshop link in the comments, and I'll make sure you get a link with some details for that. So other than that, I hope to see you next week, where I'm going to be talking about how behaviors and habits in your ecosystem affect your critical items and your data quality. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for coming along to my live today.